What happens when the galaxy's most feared predators discover that their latest catch isn't prey at all, but something far more dangerous than they ever imagined? For 3 years, the alien slavers of the Vorthak Empire thought they had captured just another primitive beast from a backwater planet called Earth. They chained him in the deepest cells of their mining ships, fed him scraps, and watched him work until his hands bled. They called him the Silent One because he never spoke, never begged, never broke. They had no idea they were keeping a human. They had no idea what humans do when pushed too far. They had no idea that across the galaxy, an entire species was searching for their lost son. And when they found him, the universe would learn why Earth's children are called the apex predators of a death world. This is the story of Marcus Chun, the man who survived 3 years in alien hell. And the moment the galaxy discovered that some chains are meant to be broken by the monsters wearing them. Some nightmares have a heartbeat. Some nightmares call themselves human. The mining ship Bloodfang cut through the void like a rusted blade, its hull scarred by countless raids across the Outer Rim territories. In its deepest holds, where the air recyclers barely functioned, and the artificial gravity fluctuated with each power surge, something stirred in the darkness. Marcus Chun had been counting. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days since the Vorthak raiders had taken him from the research station on Kepler 442b. 3 years of eating protein paste that tasted like motor oil and sleeping on metal floors that froze his bones. 3 years of watching his fellow prisoners die one by one. Some from exhaustion, others from despair, and a few from the guards' casual cruelty. But Marcus was still here, still breathing, still counting. The Vorthak called him Grizzle, their word for Silent One. They found it amusing that their human slave never spoke, never screamed, never begged like the others. What they didn't know was that Marcus had learned their language within the first 6 months. Every grunt, every command, every casual conversation between the guards, he understood it all. Knowledge was power, and power was the only currency that mattered in hell. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, and Marcus felt the familiar lurch in his stomach. Another system, another world to strip bare. The Vorthak Empire was built on pillage and slavery, their massive fleets spreading across the galaxy like a plague of locusts. They took everything, resources, technology, lives, and left nothing but empty shells behind. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor outside Marcus's cell. The guards were coming for the morning selection. Marcus kept his breathing steady, his face blank, even as his muscles tensed in preparation. The last thing he wanted was to appear weak or sick. Weak prisoners ended up in the corpse chutes. The cell door hissed open, and Overseer Vexthal stepped inside. The Vorthak was a massive creature, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with chitinous armor plating covering his torso and arms. His 4 eyes glowed amber in the dim light, and his mandibles clicked together in what Marcus had learned to recognize as irritation. "You," Vexthal growled, pointing a clawed finger at Marcus. Mining detail. Section 7. Marcus stood without a word, his chains clanking as he moved. The magnetic shackles around his wrists and ankles were supposedly escape-proof, designed to lock onto the ship's hull if a prisoner tried to run. They were heavy enough to make every movement a burden, but Marcus had grown strong despite them. The Vorthak fed their slaves just enough to keep them working, but they underestimated human adaptability. Marcus had learned to make every calorie count. As he shuffled past the Overseer, Marcus caught sight of his reflection in the polished section of wall near the door. He barely recognized himself. His once neat brown hair hung past his shoulders in tangled knots. His beard, which he'd been forced to grow since the Vorthak didn't provide shaving implements, covered most of his face. His skin was pale from years without sunlight, marked with scars from mining accidents and punishment sessions. But his eyes were still sharp, still human, still planning. The corridor outside was filled with other prisoners from various species across the galaxy. Marcus recognized most of them by now. The crystalline beings from Theta Centauri who sang mournful songs when they thought no one was listening. The six-armed Keltharians whose natural strength made them valuable in the heavy machinery sections. And the handful of other humans who'd been captured in various raids over the years. Sarah Martinez fell in a step beside him as they shuffled toward the mining bay. She'd been taken from a cargo hauler 18 months ago, and her spirit had nearly broken during her first month in chains. Marcus had helped her survive by sharing his rations when the guards weren't looking, and she'd become something like a sister to him in this nightmare. "Heard we're hitting a new world today," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the clank of chains and the hum of the ship's engines. "Some kind of research colony." Marcus nodded slightly, filing the information away. Research colonies usually meant technology, and technology meant the Vorthack would be distracted by their plunder. Distraction created opportunities. They reached the mining bay, a vast chamber filled with drilling equipment and processing units. The air here was thick with dust and the smell of heated metal. Guard Captain Crixmore stood on a raised platform overlooking the workers, his four arms crossed in a gesture of authority. Crixmore was smaller than Vexthal, but more cunning, with a reputation for catching escape attempts before they started. "Listen well, meat." Crixmore's voice boomed across the chamber through his translator unit. "Today we harvest the treasures of Meridian 7. Their scientists have developed new quantum processors worth more than most of you will ever see. Work efficiently, and you eat tonight. Cause problems, and you feed the void." The captain's gaze swept across the assembled prisoners, lingering for a moment on Marcus. There was something in those alien eyes, not quite suspicion, but awareness. Crixmore had been watching him lately, and Marcus wasn't sure why. He made a mental note to be extra careful today. The prisoners were divided into work gangs and loaded into mining shuttles. Marcus found himself assigned to Team 7, along with Sarah and 4 other humans. Their task was to infiltrate the research station's lower levels and extract any valuable technology while the main assault teams kept the colonists busy above. As their shuttle approached Meridian 7, Marcus caught his first glimpse of the planet through the small viewport near his seat. It was beautiful, blue and green like Earth with swirling white clouds and vast oceans. For a moment, he allowed himself to remember what it felt like to breathe fresh air, to feel wind on his face, to walk free under an open sky. Then, the shuttle lurched as anti-aircraft fire erupted from the planet's surface, and Marcus was pulled back to reality. The colony was fighting back. Good. Resistance meant chaos, and chaos meant opportunity. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Brace for combat landing. Defense grid is active but weakening." Marcus closed his eyes and focused on his breathing. In his mind, he went over the layout of a typical research station based on the dozens he'd helped the Vorthack plunder over the years. Emergency exits, power systems, communication arrays, all the weak points that might be exploited by someone who knew what to look for. The shuttle shook violently as it entered the atmosphere, diving toward the planet's surface in an evasive pattern. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the research station growing larger, a cluster of white domes and towering spires connected by covered walkways. It looked peaceful, almost innocent. Soon it would be another burned-out husk in the Vorthack Empire's wake. They touched down hard in what had been a garden courtyard, the shuttle's landing jets scorching exotic flowers into ash. Guard Sergeant Nixpole herded the prisoners out with shock prods, his voice harsh through his translator. "Move fast. Work hard. Die slow. You know the rules." The first thing Marcus noticed was the air. Clean and sweet, with the smell of growing things and the faint ozone tang of advanced technology. The second thing he noticed was the silence. No screaming, no weapons fire, just the distant hum of the station's power grid and the whisper of wind through the artificial trees. "Too quiet," Sarah muttered beside him, and Marcus nodded. The Vorthack assault teams should have encountered resistance by now. Either the colonists had evacuated, or they were planning something. Team 7 was led through the station's main corridors by a pair of Vorthack soldiers. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing star charts, research data, and what looked like biological scans of various species. Marcus memorized everything he could, filing details away for future use. They reached the research levels through a service elevator that descended deep underground. Here, the architecture changed from the organic curves of the living spaces above to stark metal and reinforced concrete. This was where the real work happened, where the colonists pushed the boundaries of science and technology. Spread out, ordered Sergeant Nixpole. Find anything that looks valuable. Quantum processors, data cores, experimental technology. You have 2 hours before extraction. The prisoners scattered to their assigned sections. Marcus found himself in a computer core room filled with humming servers and blinking displays. Perfect. If there was intelligence to be gathered about Vorthack operations, it would be in a place like this. He set to work removing data cores and processing units, his trained hands moving efficiently despite the magnetic shackles. Years of forced labor had made him an expert at salvage work, able to identify valuable components at a glance. But as he worked, he was also scanning the active displays, reading file names and data headers. What he found made his blood run cold. The research station wasn't studying quantum physics or alien biology. They were studying the Vorthack. Detailed intelligence reports filled the screens. Ship movements, fleet compositions, raid patterns. This was a military intelligence facility disguised as a research station. And if there was intelligence about the Vorthack here, there might be intelligence about Earth. Marcus's hands trembled as he accessed a file labeled Terra Defense Initiative. The data that scrolled past almost made him cry out in surprise. Earth wasn't defenseless. Humanity hadn't been conquered. While he'd been trapped in chains for 3 years, his species had been preparing for war. The file contained ship designs unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, sleek vessels that seemed to bend space around them, weapons that could crack planetary crusts, defensive systems that could turn entire solar systems into fortresses. Humanity had taken their first contact with hostile aliens very seriously indeed. But the most important piece of information was in the final section of the file. Earth Military Command had been tracking Vorthack movements, identifying their ships and routes. They knew where the prison fleets operated. They were coming. Grizzle. Sergeant Nixpole's voice echoed across the server room. Status report. Marcus quickly downloaded the files to a small storage device he'd liberated from one of the servers, then called back in his best approximation of a serval tone. Section nearly complete, Master. Many valuable components found. Good. Finish quickly. The assault teams have encountered unexpected resistance above. We may need to evacuate sooner than planned. Marcus worked faster, his mind racing. If the human fleet was tracking Vorthack ships, they would know about the Blood Fawn. They would know about the prisoners of war. All Marcus had to do was survive long enough for the rescue to arrive. But first, he had to get this intelligence back to his fellow prisoners. The data he'd found could save thousands of lives, if he could figure out a way to use it. As he finished stripping the last server, Marcus heard something that made his heart skip a beat. Footsteps in the corridor outside, but not the heavy tread of Vorthack soldiers. These were lighter, more measured. Human footsteps. The door to the server room slid open, and a figure stepped inside. At first glance, Marcus thought it was another prisoner. The newcomer was roughly human-sized and wore what looked like a maintenance jumpsuit. But as the figure moved closer, Marcus realized his mistake. The person was armed, not with Vorthack weapons, but with something sleek and advanced that Marcus didn't recognize. And when they spoke, it was in perfect, unaccented English. "Don't move," the newcomer said, raising their weapon. "Identify yourself." Marcus stared in shock. For 3 years, he'd heard nothing but alien languages and the broken English of fellow prisoners. To hear his native tongue spoken with such clarity and authority was almost overwhelming. "I said identify yourself," the newcomer repeated, and Marcus realized they thought he was a collaborator. The stolen Vorthack uniform and his changed appearance had fooled them. Marcus Chun, he managed to say, his voice hoarse from disuse. Formerly of the Kepler Research Station. Prisoner classification Grizzleth. I've been captive for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. The weapon lowered slightly. Chun? As in Dr. Marcus Chun, xenobiologist? We've been looking for you. Looking for me? Marcus felt his legs go weak. Who are you? Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Earth Defense Force, Special Operations. We're here to extract intelligence and neutralize Vort-hack operations in this sector. She paused, studying his face. Command is going to be very interested to hear what you've learned about their methods. The Bloodfang, Marcus said urgently. The prison ship in orbit. There are hundreds of prisoners aboard, including humans. Sarah Martinez, David Park, Elena Vasquez. We know about the ship, Kim interrupted. Our fleet is moving to intercept. But, right now, we need to get you out of here. This station is about to become a battlefield. As if summoned by her words, the sound of weapons fire echoed from the levels above. The Vort-hack assault teams had found their unexpected resistance. The real battle for Meridian 7 was just beginning. Marcus looked down at the storage device in his hand, then at Lieutenant Kim. For the first time in 3 years, he allowed himself to smile. The Vort-hack had no idea what they'd awakened when they started taking humans as slaves. They were about to find out. The sound of plasma rifle fire grew closer as Lieutenant Kim led Marcus through the research station service tunnels. The narrow passages were designed for maintenance access, hidden behind walls, and beneath floors that the Vort-hack assault teams wouldn't think to search. Kim moved with the fluid confidence of someone trained for this exact scenario, while Marcus struggled to keep up despite his years of forced physical labor. Stay close and stay quiet, Kim whispered into her throat microphone. Package is secured. Moving to extraction point Alpha. Marcus heard the faint crackle of a response through her earpiece, but couldn't make out the words. Everything about Lieutenant Kim spoke of advanced technology and careful planning. Her weapon was some kind of energy rifle that made no sound when fired. Her uniform seemed to bend light around the edges, and the scanner on her wrist displayed real-time schematics of the station layout. How long? Marcus asked, his voice still rough from years of minimal use. The simple act of speaking English again felt strange after so much silence. Extraction window opens in 43 minutes, Kim replied without slowing down. Human fleet elements will be in weapons range of the Bloodfang in approximately 2 hours. We need to get you to safety before the shooting starts. They emerged into a wider maintenance corridor lined with pipes and power conduits. The artificial lighting here flickered occasionally, and Marcus could hear the distant rumble of the station's fusion reactor deep below. Kim consulted her scanner and pointed toward a junction ahead. That way leads to the emergency shelter system. It's hardened against orbital bombardment and has its own life support. You'll be safe there until our people can. The wall next to them exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. A Vort-hack warrior stumbled through the breach, his armor smoking from weapons fire. Behind him came 2 more, their 4 arms wielding heavy assault rifles that fired superheated plasma bolts. Contact! Kim shouted, bringing her weapon up in one smooth motion. The energy rifle hummed as it discharged, and the lead Vort-hack's head simply vanished in a brief flash of coherent light. The second warrior managed to get off one shot before Kim's second burst took him down, the plasma bolt scorching the wall inches from Marcus's head. The third Vort-hack was smarter, diving for cover behind a support beam and laying down suppressing fire. Kim grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him toward an access hatch 20 feet away, but Marcus could see they wouldn't make it. The alien was already adjusting his aim. Without thinking, Marcus scooped up a heavy wrench from a maintenance kit and hurled it with all the strength his chained body could muster. 3 years of hard labor had given him muscles like cables, and the wrench struck the Vort-hack's rifle with enough force to knock it from his grip. Kim's next shot found its target before the alien could recover. Nice throw, Kim said, breathing hard. Where did you learn to fight? I didn't, Marcus replied. looking down at his shackled hands. I learned to survive. They reached the access hatch, and Kim began working on the electronic lock with a small device that looked like it could slice through steel. The hatch opened to reveal another maintenance shaft, this one leading upward toward the station's emergency systems. The intelligence I gathered, Marcus said as they climbed. It needs to get to your command. The Vorthack have patterns, weaknesses, and there are things about their fleet composition that your people need to know. What kind of things? Marcus pulled out the storage device he'd taken from the server room. Ship configurations, raiding schedules, prisoner transport routes. But also something else. They're not just random pirates. There's a hierarchy, a strategy. The Bloodfang isn't just a mining ship. It's part of a larger operation. Kim stopped climbing and looked back at him. What kind of operation? Reconnaissance. They're mapping human responses, testing our defenses. Every raid teaches them more about how we fight, how we think. The prisoners aren't just slaves, they're intelligence assets. The implications of what Marcus was saying clearly struck Kim like a physical blow. They've been studying us for at least 3 years, probably longer. And if they've learned enough, Marcus trailed off, unable to voice what they both understood. If the Vorthack had gathered sufficient intelligence about human military capabilities, the rescue fleet sailing toward them might be walking into a trap. They emerged from the maintenance shaft into what looked like a command center. Banks of monitors showed various sections of the research station, many displaying scenes of running firefights between Vorthack assault teams and what Marcus now realized were human special forces operators. The defenders weren't colonists at all, they were soldiers. Liu King. A voice called from across the command center. A tall man in combat armor approached, his face grim. Major Sullivan. We've been monitoring Vorthack communications. They're calling for reinforcements. Kim nodded toward Marcus. Sir, this is Dr. Marcus Chun. He's gathered intelligence on Vorthack operations that Command needs to see immediately. Sullivan looked Marcus up and down, taking in the chains and the stolen Vorthack uniform. Doctor, we've heard reports about what you've endured. Medical says you'll need extensive rehabilitation, but right now we need to know everything you can tell us about enemy capabilities. Marcus handed over the storage device. The files on that drive contain 3 years' worth of intelligence on Vorthack ship movements, fleet compositions, and operational patterns. But, Major, there's something else. They know about Earth. They've been preparing for a larger conflict. Sullivan's expression darkened as he plugged the device into a nearby terminal. Data began scrolling across the screen. Ship schematics, raid reports, prisoner manifests. Jesus Christ. They've been tracking our response times, cataloging our ship designs. There's more, Marcus continued. The prisoner ships aren't just holding facilities. They're mobile laboratories. The Vorthack have been conducting experiments on captured humans, testing our physical and psychological limits. They're building a profile of our species. For what purpose? Conquest, Marcus said simply. They've conquered dozens of species across the galaxy using the same method. Capture specimens, study them, identify weaknesses, then return in force to subjugate the entire species. The only difference with humans is that we've been fighting back. A communications officer across the room called out urgently. Major, priority transmission from Fleet Command. Sullivan moved to the communication station, and Marcus could hear Admiral Morrison's voice crackling through the speakers. Meridian Station, this is Admiral Morrison aboard the Washington. Fleet elements are now 3 hours from intercept with the prison ship Bloodfang. What's your status on intelligence gathering? Admiral, we've recovered Dr. Marcus Chun along with extensive intelligence on Vorthack operations, Sullivan replied. The information suggests enemy preparations for a larger offensive against human space. There was a pause before Morrison responded. Understood. Package the intelligence and prepare for emergency upload. We may need to accelerate our timeline. Sir, Dr. Chun indicates there are several hundred prisoners aboard the Bloodfang, including captured humans. Can you confirm rescue operations will proceed? Another pause, longer this time. Major, we've identified 17 Vorthack vessels converging on this system, including 3 Dreadnought-class ships. The Bloodfang is heavily escorted. Rescue operations may not be possible without significant fleet losses. Marcus felt his heart sink. Sarah Martinez, Elena Vasquez, all the humans who had helped him survive, they were still in chains aboard that ship. The thought of abandoning them to preserve the larger strategic picture was logical, but it felt like betrayal. Admiral, Marcus spoke up, loud enough for his voice to carry to the communications pickup. This is Dr. Marcus Chun. The prisoners aboard that ship include intelligence assets who've been observing Vorthack operations for years. They've seen things I haven't. And, sir, if we abandon them now, it sends a message to every human who might be captured in future operations that Earth doesn't come for its people. Dr. Chun, I appreciate what you've endured, but Admiral, Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. The Vorthack understand strength. They've conquered species that were individually stronger, faster, and smarter than they are. But they've never faced a species that refuses to abandon its own. That's our advantage, not our technology or our tactics. It's the fact that we don't leave people behind. The communication channel remained silent for nearly a minute. Finally, Morrison's voice returned. Dr. Chun, Major Sullivan, prepare for full intelligence upload. Fleet will proceed with rescue operations on schedule. All vessels, adjust formation for assault on prison ship Bloodfang. Marcus closed his eyes in relief. His fellow prisoners would have their chance at freedom, even if it meant risking the entire rescue fleet. It was a decision that could cost thousands of lives, but it was also fundamentally human in a way that Marcus hoped the Vorthack would never understand. Lieutenant Kim approached him with a medical scanner in her hand. Dr. Chun, I need to run some basic diagnostics before we upload your intelligence. There may be psychological conditioning we need to account for. I'm fine, Marcus said automatically, then caught himself. After 3 years in captivity, he probably wasn't fine at all. What kind of conditioning? Vorthack used neural implants to control difficult prisoners. The implants are designed to be undetectable, creating artificial behavioral patterns that serve their purposes. We need to make sure your intelligence assessments aren't compromised. The scanner hummed as Kim ran it over Marcus's skull and spine. After a moment, she frowned and ran the scan again. That's odd. I'm not detecting any implants, but there are signs of neural activity that don't match baseline human patterns. What does that mean? Before Kim could answer, Major Sullivan called from across the room. Lieutenant, we've got problems. Vorthack assault teams have breached the upper levels and are moving toward our position. Time to evacuation is now 15 minutes. Kim holstered her scanner and grabbed her rifle. Dr. Chun, I need you to get to the hardened shelter and wait for extraction. The intelligence upload will have to happen remotely. No, Marcus said, surprising himself again. I'm going with you. Sir, you're a civilian, and you've been traumatized. You're not equipped for combat operations. Marcus looked down at his chained hands, then back up at Kim. Lieutenant, I've spent 3 years studying these creatures. I know how they move, how they think, how they fight. You're going to need that knowledge if you want to get out of here alive. Major Sullivan's voice cut across the room. Make the call, Lieutenant. We move in 60 seconds. Kim looked at Marcus for a long moment, clearly weighing the risks. Finally, she reached into her equipment pack and pulled out a small cutting tool. This is going to hurt, she said, aiming the device at his magnetic shackles. The tool emitted a high-frequency whine as it sliced through the metal bands around Marcus's wrists and ankles. When the chains fell away, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. He flexed his hands, feeling circulation return to his fingers for the first time since his capture. Thank you, he said quietly. Kim handed him a sidearm and a spare magazine. Don't thank me yet. We still have to fight our way out of here. The sounds of battle were growing closer. The distinctive whine of Vorthack plasma weapons mixed with the sharper crack of human energy rifles. Through the command center's monitors, Marcus could see armored figures advancing through the station's corridors, their four-eyed helmets turning left and right as they searched for targets. They're using hunting formation, Marcus observed, watching the tactical display. 3 warrior teams with overlapping fields of fire. But they always leave their rear approach unguarded. They assume their armor will protect them from flanking attacks. Sullivan looked up from his tactical board. Can you predict their movement patterns? Marcus studied the displays, his mind automatically cataloging the Vorthack advance. 3 years of watching these creatures had taught him to think like them, to anticipate their actions. They'll secure the main corridors first, then begin systematic room-to-room searches. But they won't expect resistance from the maintenance areas. Those are considered beneath the notice of warrior castes. How long before they reach this position? 12 minutes if they maintain current pace. 7 if they encounter heavy resistance and decide to accelerate their advance. Kim was checking her equipment one final time. Then, we better move now. Dr. Chun, stay close and do exactly what I tell you. If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you disappear. Marcus nodded, checking the unfamiliar weight of the sidearm in his hand. Lieutenant, there's something else you should know about the Vorthack. They have a psychological weakness. What kind of weakness? They're apex predators on their homeworld. They've never encountered prey that fights back effectively. When they face determined resistance, especially from smaller creatures, they tend to become overcautious. It's instinctive. In their natural environment, small aggressive creatures are usually venomous. So we make ourselves seem more dangerous than we are. Exactly. Fear is the one emotion they understand completely. The lights suddenly went out, plunging the command center into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red. Through the speakers, they could hear Vorthack voices echoing through the station's corridors, their alien words translated by the computer systems. Seal all exits. The meat will not escape. Major Sullivan's voice cut through the darkness. All teams, this is command. We are initiating emergency extraction protocols. Rendezvous at the primary landing zone in 10 minutes. Marcus looked around the darkened command center one last time, memorizing the faces of the soldiers who had risked everything to rescue him. In a few hours, the human fleet would engage the Bloodfang and its escorts. The real battle for Earth's children was about to begin. The emergency extraction route led through a maze of service tunnels beneath the research station's main structure. Marcus found himself moving with a fluidity he hadn't felt in years, his unchained body remembering what it meant to be free. Lieutenant Kim moved ahead of him like a ghost, her enhanced armor making her nearly invisible in the dim emergency lighting. Contact ahead, Kim whispered into her throat microphone. 3 Vorthack warriors, heavy weapons. Marcus peered around the corner and immediately recognized the tactical formation. Standard breach team, he murmured to Kim. They'll have plasma charges set to blow through the blast door ahead. 2 warriors providing overwatch while the 3rd prepares the charges. How do you know that? I've watched them do this hundreds of times during raids. They're predictable once you understand their doctrine. Kim studied the alien warriors through her scope. Predictable how? Marcus closed his eyes and visualized the scene as he'd witnessed it countless times from his chains. The charge setter will have his back to us for approximately 30 seconds while he calibrates the explosive. The Overwatch team will be focused on the approaches from ahead and above. They never expect attack from behind and below. There's no below here, Kim pointed out. Marcus smiled for the first time in 3 years. Yes, there is. He pointed to a maintenance access panel near their position. The tunnel beyond was barely large enough for a human to crawl through, but it would emerge directly beneath the Vorthack position. Waste recycling line. It connects to the main processing center 2 levels down, but there's an emergency access point that comes up right under where they're standing. Kim looked skeptical. That tunnel's been sealed for maintenance. Even if we could get through, we'd be crawling through waste processing lines, yes. Lieutenant, I've spent 3 years in conditions that would kill most people. A little sewage isn't going to stop me now. She studied his face in the red emergency lighting, seeing something there that convinced her. All right, but this is a voluntary mission. If you change your mind, I won't. Kim spoke quietly into her microphone. Command, this is Kim. Package and our attempting alternate route around contact. Stand by. Major Sullivan's voice crackled back. Negative, Lieutenant. Fall back to secondary extraction point. We cannot risk the package. Marcus grabbed Kim's arm before she could respond. Major Sullivan is thinking tactically, but he's not thinking like someone who's been a slave for 3 years. Every person we save here, every small victory, it matters. It changes who we are when this is over. Kim looked at him for a long moment, then keyed her microphone again. Command, package requests permission to assist in contact elimination. He has extensive knowledge of enemy tactical patterns. There was a pause before Sullivan responded. Permission denied. Package is civilian personnel with no combat training. Sir, Kim replied. Package has been observing enemy operations for 3 years. He may be our best tactical asset for close-quarters engagement. Another pause, longer this time. Finally, Lieutenant, you are responsible for package safety. Any casualties are on your head. Understood, Command. Kim disconnected and began working on the maintenance panel. Dr. Chun, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Marcus admitted. The access panel opened to reveal a tunnel barely 3 feet in diameter. The smell that emerged made Kim gag, but Marcus had smelled worse things in the Vorthack prison holds. He crawled in first, moving as quietly as possible through the cramped space. Behind him, Kim followed with obvious reluctance. The tunnel was a nightmare of pipes, filters, and organic waste that had been processed down to its component molecules. Marcus forced himself to focus on the mission rather than the conditions, using his knowledge of station layout to navigate through the darkness. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes, they reached the access point he'd remembered. Through the thin metal grating above them, Marcus could hear the distinctive clicking sounds of Vorthack speech. He pressed his eye to one of the holes in the grating and found himself looking up at exactly the scene he'd predicted. 3 warriors in their distinctive armor, one working on plasma charges, while 2 others maintained overwatch positions. Marcus motioned for Kim to move into position beside him. She raised her rifle and sighted through the grating, but shook her head. Angle's wrong. I can't get a clean shot on all 3. You don't need to, Marcus whispered. Take out the charge setter first. When his partners turn to investigate, they'll expose their back armor joints. 2 more shots, and it's over. Kim aimed carefully and squeezed the trigger. Her energy rifle made virtually no sound, but the Vorthack warrior working on the charges simply collapsed. His partners spun toward the noise, and, true to Marcus's prediction, their movements exposed the gaps in their armor plating. 2 more silent shots, and the corridor was clear. They emerged from the access tunnel to find the Vorthack weapons scattered on the ground. Kim immediately began stripping useful equipment, while Marcus examined the plasma charges that had been set on the blast door. Can you disarm them? Kim asked. Marcus studied the alien technology. He'd watched Vorthack demolition teams work dozens of times, but always from a distance. The control interface was covered in symbols that he recognized, but didn't fully understand. I think so. The Vorthack use a 3-stage arming sequence to prevent accidental detonation. If I can reverse the final stage. His fingers moved carefully over the alien controls, following patterns he'd observed during countless raids. There was a soft chime, and the charges powered down. Done. Kim looked impressed. How did you learn their technology? Same way I learned their language. I watched and listened and remembered everything. Marcus picked up one of the fallen Vorthack rifles, checking its power level. Lieutenant, there's something I need to tell you about the rescue fleet. What about it? Marcus chose his words carefully. The intelligence I gathered suggests the Vorthack know about the planned rescue operation. They've been monitoring Earth communications somehow. Kim's expression went cold. That's impossible. Our transmissions are quantum encrypted. The Vorthack have been studying us for 3 years. They've had access to captured human technology, captured human personnel. Marcus met her eyes. They've been inside our communications network the entire time. Before Kim could respond, her throat microphone crackled with Major Sullivan's voice. All teams, abort extraction immediately. We're reading massive Vorthack reinforcements entering the system. Fleet Command is ordering emergency withdrawal. Kim keyed her microphone. Command, what about the rescue operation? The prison ship. Scrubbed. Admiral Morrison is pulling the fleet back to defensive positions. We can't risk a major engagement with incomplete intelligence. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. They're abandoning the prisoners. Package recovery is priority 1, Sullivan's voice continued. All extraction teams fall back to emergency beacons immediately. Marcus looked at Kim, seeing his own thoughts reflected in her expression. The rescue fleet was retreating, leaving hundreds of prisoners aboard the Blood Fawn. Sarah Martinez and all the others who had helped him survive 3 years in hell were going to die in chains. Lieutenant, Marcus said quietly, I can't leave them. Dr. Chun, you're one man with no equipment and minimal training. What exactly do you think you can do? Marcus hefted the Vorthack rifle he'd picked up. I know their ships. I know their procedures. I know where they keep the prisoners and how they guard them. You'll never make it past their security. I've been past their security for 3 years. They think I'm a broken slave who barely understands their language. Marcus began stripping armor pieces from the fallen Vorthack warriors. But I'm not broken. I'm not a slave. And I understand them better than they could possibly imagine. Kim watched as he assembled a makeshift disguise from the alien equipment. This is suicide. Maybe. But those people up there kept me alive when I wanted to die. They shared their food when they were starving. They gave me hope when there was none. Marcus finished adjusting the armor and looked at her. Lieutenant, I need you to get a message to Earth Command. What message? Tell them that the Vorthack made one critical mistake. They assumed that humans are just another species to be cataloged and conquered. They don't understand that we're pack hunters who've never forgotten how to be dangerous. Kim was silent for a moment. The shuttle bay is 3 levels up. Even if you could steal a ship, the Blood Fawn has defensive systems that would destroy anything approaching without authorization. Marcus smiled, and for the first time Kim saw something in his eyes that must have terrified the Vorthack guards during their weaker moments. I'm not going to approach without authorization. I'm going to approach as Overseer Vexthal returning with a captured Earth spy. That's insane. The best plans usually are. Kim looked at her chronometer. Dr. Chun, extraction window closes in 12 minutes. If you're going to do this, it has to be now. Marcus checked the Vorthack rifle one more time, then looked up at the ceiling where his fellow prisoners waited in chains aboard a ship that was about to become a battlefield. Tell Admiral Morrison that Earth doesn't abandon its people. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs. I'll tell him. Marcus turned to go, then stopped. Lieutenant, there's one more thing. The neural activity your scanner detected. It's not from Vorthack conditioning. What is it? I think it's from learning to think like them. 3 years of watching, understanding, predicting their behavior. I've become something that can hunt them using their own instincts against them. Kim studied his face in the emergency light. Dr. Chun, when this is over, you'll know exactly how dangerous human beings can be when someone they care about is in danger. Marcus moved toward the shuttle bay with the fluid grace of someone who had learned to be invisible. Behind him, Kim spoke in her throat microphone. Command, this is Lieutenant Kim. Package is secure and ready for extraction. But I need to report something else. What is it, Lieutenant? Sir, I don't think we've been rescuing Dr. Chun. I think we've been setting him free. The shuttle bay doors slid open as Marcus approached, and he could see several Vorthack craft waiting in the launch tubes. One was a personal transport configured for high-ranking officers, exactly what he needed. The guard at the controls looked up as he approached, and Marcus spoke in fluent Vorthack. Prepare the command shuttle for immediate departure. I have captured intelligence that must reach the Blood Fawn immediately. The guard's 4 eyes widened as he took in Marcus's stolen armor and confident bearing. Yes, Overseer. Shall I signal the fleet to expect your arrival? Negative. Maintain communication silence. The Earth spy may have allies monitoring our transmissions. Marcus climbed into the pilot's seat of the alien craft, his hands moving automatically over controls he'd watched Vorthack pilots use hundreds of times. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, and he felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity as the craft lifted off from the station's surface. Through the viewport, he could see the research station falling away below him. Somewhere in those corridors, Lieutenant Kim and her team were fighting their way to their own extraction point. Somewhere beyond the planet's atmosphere, the human rescue fleet was reluctantly withdrawing from a battle they thought they couldn't win. And somewhere ahead, aboard a Vorthack prison ship called the Bloodfang, hundreds of prisoners were waiting for someone to remember that Earth's children don't stay lost forever. Marcus engaged the shuttle's autopilot and began reviewing the ship's weapons systems. The Vorthack had made a fundamental error in their calculations. They'd assumed that studying human prisoners would teach them how to defeat humanity. Instead, they'd created something much more dangerous, a human who understood them completely while remaining essentially unknown to them. The distance to the Bloodfang was approximately 40,000 kilometers. At current acceleration, he would dock with the prison ship in just under 2 hours. That gave him time to perfect his deception and prepare for what would either be the greatest rescue in human history or the most spectacular suicide mission ever attempted. Either way, the Vorthack were about to learn something their intelligence files had never prepared them for. What happens when a human decides that some things are worth dying for? The stolen Vorthack shuttle approached the Bloodfang with the slow, measured pace of a predator that had already claimed its prey. Marcus maintained perfect formation with the returning raiding craft, his vessel indistinguishable from the dozen other shuttles carrying plunder and prisoners back to the massive prison ship. Through the viewports, he could see the Bloodfang in all its terrible majesty, a kilometer-long beast of metal and composite armor, bristling with weapons and scarred from countless battles across the galaxy. Marcus had spent 3 years studying this ship from the inside, memorizing every corridor, every security checkpoint, every weakness. Now, he was seeing it from the outside for the first time, and the sight filled him with a cold fury that he channeled into focus. Somewhere inside that floating hell were the people who had kept him sane during the darkest moments of his captivity. Shuttle Vexthul 7, this is Bloodfang Flight Control. The communications system crackled in Vorthack. You are cleared for docking bay 4. Report your cargo manifest. Marcus keyed the transmitter, pitching his voice to match the arrogant tone he'd heard from countless Vorthack officers. Flight Control. This is Overseer Vexthul. I carry captured Earth intelligence operative and priority intelligence data. Clear all personnel from docking bay 4 immediately. There was a pause before the controller responded. Overseer, we show no scheduled intelligence captures in your mission parameters. The capture was opportunistic, Marcus replied smoothly. Earth forces attempted to extract intelligence from Meridian Station. Their operative has been interrogated and carries critical data about human fleet movements. Captain Crixmore is to be notified immediately upon my arrival. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus could almost hear the mental calculations taking place in the flight controller's mind. The risk of questioning a superior officer versus the risk of allowing an unauthorized boarding. Vorthack society was built on rigid hierarchies, and challenging authority was severely punished. Understood, Overseer. Docking Bay 4 is cleared for your arrival. Welcome home. The shuttle settled into the docking bay with a soft thud that Marcus felt through the deck plates. Through the viewports, he could see Vorthack technicians and cargo handlers moving away from the landing area, exactly as he'd ordered. The bay doors sealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and Marcus began the final preparations for what he knew would likely be a one-way mission. He'd spent the 2-hour flight studying the shuttle's equipment manifest and modifying several key systems. The personal armor he'd stolen from the Meridian Station guards now concealed 3 plasma grenades and a small demolition charge, all set to his biometric signature. If this mission went wrong, he'd ensure the Vorthack learned nothing useful from his capture. The shuttle's cargo bay contained emergency supplies that Marcus had modified into improvised weapons. A medical kit had been converted into an incendiary device. Emergency rations had been mixed with industrial solvents to create a crude but effective explosive compound. Every item that could be weaponized had been, because Marcus understood something about desperate situations that the Vorthack never would. When everything is at stake, everything becomes a weapon. The docking bay's atmospheric systems finished their cycle, and Marcus heard the external locks engaging with his shuttle. A boarding ramp extended from the station's airlock, and Marcus could see a reception committee forming outside his viewport. Two guards flanked by a figure in the elaborate armor of a senior officer, Captain Crixmore himself. Marcus activated the shuttle's external speakers and announced in Vorthack, all personnel maintain minimum safe distance. The prisoner may be contaminated with Earth pathogens. It was a perfect excuse to keep the welcoming party at a distance while he prepared his deception. Marcus opened the shuttle's cargo bay and began assembling what appeared to be a holding cell from emergency materials. In reality, it was a portable weapons cache disguised as prisoner transport equipment. Captain Crixmore's voice echoed through the docking bay. Overseer Vexthal, report to my position immediately for debriefing. Marcus emerged from the shuttle wearing the stolen Vorthack armor, his human features concealed beneath an environmental mask that he claimed was necessary for protection against Earth contaminants. The armor was several sizes too large, but the Vorthack had enough physical variation that his size wouldn't automatically reveal his deception. Captain, Marcus said, approaching with the confident stride of a successful raider. The Earth operative attempted to destroy critical intelligence before capture. I have recovered partial data, but interrogation will be required to extract complete information. Crixmore's four eyes studied Marcus with obvious suspicion. Overseer, you appear different. Have you been injured? Minor exposure to Earth toxins during the capture. Marcus replied without hesitation. Medical recommends isolation protocols until decontamination is complete. It was a calculated risk. Isolation would limit his contact with other Vorthack who might recognize that he wasn't who he claimed to be, but it would also restrict his movement within the ship. Marcus was counting on Crixmore's greed for intelligence to outweigh his caution. Where is this prisoner? Crixmore demanded. Marcus gestured toward the shuttle's cargo bay. Secured in Containment Unit 7. The creature appears to be in some form of hibernation state, possibly a defense mechanism triggered by capture stress. Crixmore moved toward the shuttle, his guards following at a respectful distance. Marcus had anticipated this moment and prepared accordingly. Inside the supposed containment unit was a medical dummy wrapped in emergency blankets, connected to life support equipment that generated appropriate biosignatures. To casual observation, it would appear to be an unconscious human prisoner. Interesting, Crixmore mused, studying the readings on the containment unit's display. This creature's neural activity suggests higher intelligence than typical Earth specimens. It may be a command-level operative. My assessment as well, Captain. I recommend immediate transfer to the deep interrogation cells. The creature may possess critical intelligence about human fleet dispositions. Crixmore nodded approvingly. Excellent work, Overseer. Arrange transfer immediately. Then report to Intelligence Section for full debriefing. Marcus saluted in the Vorthack manner, a gesture he'd observed thousands of times. As you command, Captain. The next phase of his plan required moving through the ship's corridors without triggering security protocols. Marcus had the advantage of knowing the blood fungus layout better than most of the crew, having been marched through these passages countless times during his captivity. The key was to move with purpose while avoiding areas where his deception might be challenged. He directed a maintenance crew to transport the fake containment unit through the service corridors toward the interrogation sections, claiming that security protocols required avoiding main thoroughfares. In reality, this route would take him past the prisoner holding areas where his fellow captives were kept. As they moved deeper into the ship, Marcus felt the familiar weight of despair that always seemed to permeate these levels. The air recyclers here were older and less efficient, creating a perpetual atmosphere of staleness and decay. The lighting was dimmer, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. This was where hope came to die. But Marcus was no longer the broken man who had shuffled through these corridors in chains. 3 years of watching and learning had taught him to see the Bloodfang not as an impregnable fortress, but as a complex machine with predictable patterns and exploitable weaknesses. He knew which guards would be on duty at what times, which security cameras had blind spots, which maintenance shafts connected to critical systems. "Stop here," Marcus commanded as they reached an intersection near the prisoner holding areas. "I must verify security protocols before proceeding." The maintenance crew, accustomed to the arbitrary commands of their superiors, waited obediently while Marcus consulted a portable scanner. In reality, he was using the device to detect the biosignatures of the prisoners in the nearby cells. The readings confirmed what he'd hoped. Sarah Martinez, Elena Vasquez, David Park, and the others were all still alive. "Security verification complete," Marcus announced. "Continue to interrogation cell 7. As they moved past the prisoner holding areas, Marcus caught a glimpse through one of the observation ports. Dozens of beings from various species sat or lay in conditions that barely qualified as survival. Most showed the signs of prolonged captivity, weight loss, psychological trauma, the 1,000-yard stare of people who had given up hope. But not all of them. Marcus spotted Sarah Martinez near the back of one cell, and even through the thick observation glass, he could see that her eyes were still alert. She was watching the maintenance crew with the careful attention of someone who hadn't stopped thinking, hadn't stopped planning. When her gaze passed over Marcus's disguise form, he saw her pause for just a moment, as if something about his movement pattern seemed familiar. Marcus allowed himself a small smile beneath his environmental mask. Sarah had survived by being observant, and that same skill might help her recognize the opportunity he was about to create. The containment unit was delivered to interrogation cell 7 without incident, and the maintenance crew departed to attend to other duties. Marcus was now alone in one of the most secure sections of the ship, with access to advanced security systems and communications equipment. This was where the real work would begin. He began by accessing the cell's computer terminal, using command codes he'd memorized during his countless trips past guard stations. The Vorthack security system was sophisticated but predictable, relying on hierarchical authorization rather than dynamic encryption. Once Marcus had established his credentials as Overseer Vexthal, the system granted him broad access to ship operations. The first thing he did was review the current prisoner manifest. The numbers were worse than he'd feared. Nearly 800 beings from 17 different species were currently held aboard the Bloodfang. Humans numbered 47, scattered across multiple holding areas to prevent coordination and escape attempts. Marcus began mapping the ship's current security status. Guard rotations, patrol schedules, automated systems. All of it was logged and available for his review. He also found something that made his blood run cold: the ship's destination logs. The Bloodfang wasn't just a roving raider anymore. It was heading for a massive fleet rendezvous in the Kethra system, where hundreds of Vorthack vessels were gathering for what the files called final phase operations against Earth. The timeline was shorter than anyone on Earth realized. The Vorthack main fleet would be in position to assault human space within 6 standard days. Unless the intelligence Marcus had gathered could reach Earth command immediately, humanity was about to face an invasion for which they were completely unprepared. Marcus downloaded the fleet disposition data to a portable storage device, then began accessing the ship's communication systems. He needed to send a message to the human rescue fleet, but doing so would immediately reveal his location to Vorthack security. It would be a one-time transmission before they found and killed him. As he worked, Marcus heard footsteps in the corridor outside the interrogation cell. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. His deception had been discovered, or someone was coming to check on his progress with the fake prisoner. Either way, his time was running out. Marcus armed the demolition charges hidden in his stolen armor and prepared to send his message to Earth Command. The transmission would burn through the ship's communications array with enough power to reach the human fleet, but it would also announce his presence to every Vorthack on board. After that, he'd have perhaps 10 minutes before they breached the interrogation cell and found him. 10 minutes to figure out how to rescue 800 prisoners from a ship crewed by 3,000 hostile aliens. Marcus looked at the fake containment unit that had gotten him this far, then at the security terminal that connected him to every system on the ship. 3 years of silent observation were about to pay dividends in ways the Vorthack could never have imagined. "Sarah," he whispered to himself, thinking of the woman in the holding cell who'd kept him alive when death seemed preferable to another day in chains. "I'm coming. Just hold on a little longer." The footsteps outside were getting closer, and Marcus could hear Vorthack voices discussing security protocols. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to happen fast. He positioned his finger over the transmission key and prepared to announce to the galaxy that Marcus Chun was no longer a slave, and the Vorthack were about to learn what it meant to awaken a sleeping apex predator. Marcus pressed the transmission key, and the interrogation cell's communications array blazed alive with enough power to burn through 3 star systems. The message burst toward Earth space in a cascade of encrypted data that would reach Admiral Morrison's fleet in approximately 4 hours. But Marcus didn't have 4 hours. He had perhaps 4 minutes before the Vorthack traced the transmission and came for him. The message was simple and devastating. "This is Dr. Marcus Chun aboard the Vorthack prison ship Bloodfawn. Main fleet of 847 vessels gathering in Kethera's system for assault on Earth space. Timeline, 6 days. Prisoner count aboard this vessel, 799 beings from 17 species, including 47 humans. Coordinates and fleet disposition data included. Tell Admiral Morrison that Earth's children are coming home." As the transmission completed, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Marcus had triggered every security protocol simultaneously: unauthorized communications, breach of restricted systems, and command structure infiltration. Red lights strobed in the corridors, and he could hear the heavy footsteps of security teams converging on his position. But Marcus had also done something else during his time in the interrogation cell. He had accessed the ship's central computer and uploaded a virus program built from human code fragments he'd memorized during his captivity. The virus was simple but effective. It would systematically corrupt the Vorthack computer systems while appearing to be a random cascade failure. To the Vorthack technicians, it would look like their own equipment was malfunctioning under stress. The first sign of the virus's effectiveness came when the corridor lighting began flickering in patterns that spelled out freedom in human Morse code. Marcus had programmed the virus to use the ship's own systems to communicate with the prisoners, letting them know that rescue was coming. Heavy impacts against the interrogation cell door told Marcus that the security teams had arrived. Vorthack voices echoed through the corridors, their translated words filling the air with threats and confusion. But Marcus was no longer listening to them. Instead, he was focused on the portable scanner in his hands, which was now displaying a real-time map of every prisoner location on the ship. The scanner had been modified during his shuttle flight to interface with the ship's biosensor network. Marcus could see exactly where his fellow humans were located, along with the positions of guards and security teams. More importantly, he could see the ship's structural weak points, areas where a small explosion could cascade into catastrophic system failures. Marcus armed the first plasma grenade and placed it against the interrogation cell's wall. The explosion would breach into the primary power conduit that fed the ship's gravity generators. Without artificial gravity, the Vorthack would lose their primary tactical advantage in ship-to-ship combat. They had evolved in high-gravity environments and were poorly adapted to zero-G operations. The cell door burst open in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Captain Crixmore stepped through the breach, flanked by 6 heavily armed guards. His 4 eyes blazed with fury as he took in the scene. The destroyed communication equipment, the evidence of Marcus's deception, and the human who stood calmly in the center of the chaos he had created. Impossible Kriegsmord snarled. You are the silent one. Grizzled. You do not speak, do not think, do not. I am Dr. Marcus Chun. Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying clearly through the interrogation cell. Xenobiologist. Human being. And for 3 years, I have been learning everything about your species while you learn nothing about mine. Crixmore's mandibles clicked in what Marcus recognized as extreme agitation. You will be dissected slowly, human. Every piece of your primitive brain will be studied to understand how you accomplished this deception. Captain, Marcus said calmly, you're making the same mistake your people always make. You assume that intelligence equals superiority. But intelligence without wisdom is just clever stupidity. Marcus activated the plasma grenade. The explosion tore through the interrogation cell's wall and into the power conduit beyond. Lights throughout the ship flickered and died as the main power grid fluctuated. In the darkness that followed, Marcus moved with the fluid grace of someone who had memorized every obstacle in the room. The Vorthat guards, adapted to bright light and stable gravity, were momentarily disoriented. Marcus had spent 3 years learning to function in conditions that would break most sentient beings. Darkness was just another environment. Pain was just another variable. And the Vorthat guards who had tormented him for so long were just another obstacle to overcome. The first guard went down to a strike that targeted the gap between his armor plates, a weakness Marcus had observed during countless punishment sessions. The second guard's plasma rifle was torn from his grip and used as a club against his own head. The third guard found himself facing a human who moved like liquid violence, striking with precision that came from years of planning this exact moment. Captain Crixmore drew his sidearm and fired wildly into the darkness. Plasma bolts scorched the walls and equipment, but Marcus had already moved to a position Crixmore couldn't anticipate. When the emergency lighting finally activated, the captain found himself alone with unconscious guards and a human who seemed to have materialized from shadow itself. Ow! Crixmore demanded, his weapon trained on Marcus, but his hands shaking with either rage or fear. You taught me, Marcus replied simply. Every beating, every moment of humiliation, every casual cruelty. You taught me exactly how your people think, how they move, what they fear. You just never bothered to ask what I was learning. Marcus triggered the second plasma grenade, which he had placed near the cell's atmospheric recycling intake. The explosion would spread his virus program through the ship's air filtration system, where it would infect secondary computer networks throughout the vessel. The ship shuddered as additional systems began failing in cascade. Gravity fluctuated wildly, causing the captain to stumble. In that moment of vulnerability, Marcus struck, not to kill. He needed Crixmore alive for what came next. When the captain regained consciousness, he found himself secured in the interrogation cell's restraint chair, the same chair where hundreds of prisoners had been tortured over the years. Marcus stood before him, no longer disguised, his human features clearly visible in the emergency lighting. Now, Captain, Marcus said conversationally, you're going to help me save every prisoner on this ship. I will tell you nothing, human filth. Marcus smiled, and Crixmore finally understood why his ancestors had learned to fear creatures that showed their teeth before attacking. Captain, you misunderstand. I'm not asking for information. I'm giving you a choice. Marcus activated his portable scanner and showed Crixmore the display. This virus I've introduced will destroy your ship's critical systems within approximately 2 hours. Life support, artificial gravity, navigation, weapons, everything will fail in sequence. Your crew will have enough time to evacuate to the escort vessels, but the ship itself will be lost. Crixmore studied the readings on the scanner, his expression shifting from defiance to concern. Impossible. Our computer security is designed by a species that thinks in rigid hierarchies and predictable patterns, Marcus finished. I've had 3 years to study your technology, Captain. Human programming concepts are completely alien to your system architecture. Your computers literally don't know how to defend against what I've done to them. The captain's four eyes narrowed. What choice are you offering? Help me evacuate the prisoners to the escape pods, and I'll give you the shutdown codes for the virus. Your ship will be saved, your crew will survive, and you'll even have a story to tell about the clever human who almost escaped. And if I refuse? Marcus leaned closer, and his voice dropped to the tone he'd learned from listening to Vorthack interrogators. Then, in 2 hours, you'll be floating in space wondering why you ever thought it was a good idea to make pets out of apex predators. Crixmore was silent for long moments, clearly weighing his options. Finally, how do I know you will honor this agreement? Because, Captain, unlike your people, humans understand that survival sometimes requires cooperation. We don't see every interaction as a contest to be won. Marcus began releasing Crixmore's restraints. Besides, I've already won. The virus is designed to propagate through your entire fleet once they attempt to analyze the ship's systems. Within 6 standard days, every Vorthack vessel will be dealing with cascade failures. Your invasion fleet won't reach Earth space. It'll be too busy trying not to suffocate in dead ships. The full implications of what Marcus was saying hit Crixmore like a physical blow. You have destroyed our entire military capability. No, Marcus Gerecti. I've simply demonstrated that enslaving sentient beings carries risks that your people never calculated. The real question is whether the Vorthack Empire will learn from this experience or repeat it. Over the next hour, Marcus and a reluctant Captain Crixmore worked together to evacuate prisoners from the Bloodfawn. The escape pods were programmed with coordinates for the nearest human-controlled system, along with enough supplies to sustain their occupants during the journey. As each pod launched, Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders that he'd carried for 3 years. Sarah Martinez was in the last group to be evacuated. When she saw Marcus without his disguise, standing freely in the pod bay, she simply stared for a moment before speaking. "Marcus? Is it really you?" "Hello, Sarah," he said quietly. "I told you I'd find a way." She embraced him with tears streaming down her face. "How did you do all this?" Marcus looked around the pod bay, where dozens of beings were preparing for their journey to freedom. "I remembered that Earth's children don't stay lost forever." As the final escape pod launched, Marcus turned to Captain Crixmore. "The shutdown codes," the captain demanded. Marcus handed him a data chip. "Everything you need is on there. But, Captain, I recommend you study the viral code very carefully. It might teach your people something about the consequences of underestimating other species." Crixmore pocketed the chip and studied Marcus with something that might have been respect. "What will you do now, human?" Marcus looked toward the pod bay's viewport, where the escape pods were already tiny points of light headed for human space. In the distance, he could see the running lights of Admiral Morrison's rescue fleet, which had received his transmission and come to collect Earth's lost children. "Now," Marcus said, "I go home, and I help my people prepare for the next species that thinks humans make good slaves." As the human fleet's shuttles arrived to collect the last refugees from the Bloodfawn, Marcus took one final look at the ship that had been his prison for 3 years. It was already showing signs of system failure. Flickering lights, unstable gravity, the general air of mechanical distress that indicated imminent breakdown. The Vorthack had taught him that slavery was about breaking the spirit of the enslaved. They had been wrong. Slavery was about revealing the true nature of both the enslaved and the enslavers. And what Marcus had revealed was that some chains are meant to be broken, some cages are meant to be opened, and some predators only sleep until it's time to hunt. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days after his capture, Dr. Marcus Chin stepped aboard a human vessel as a free man. Behind him, the Bloodfawn continued its death spiral into the void. Ahead of him, Earth waited to hear what he had learned about their enemies and themselves. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their absolute refusal to leave anyone behind, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost. The Vorthak Empire had made many mistakes in their conquest of the galaxy, but none would prove more costly than the day they decided to chain a human being and call him broken. Some nightmares, it turned out, had a conscience, and some monsters knew the difference between justice and revenge.